Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to talk about the differences between Nemesis Lockdown and Nemesis. So this video is really for those of you who are veterans to Nemesis, understand the basic rules of plays of Nemesis, and just want to know what the differences are between Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown. If you are interested in how to play video of Nemesis, feel free to check out the video that's going to be popping up in the upper right corner at this moment. But with that being said, let's cover the biggest changes between this and the original game. First, let's talk about how you go about escaping. There are no escape pods. There's no, like killing the queen and piloting the ship anywhere. You're on a base on Mars. So there's three ways in which you can consider yourself safe for the end of the game. The first way is making your way into the bunker. And so this is probably one of the more exciting ways. It makes use of the rover token and or the enviro suit, and basically you make your way over to whatever room is here at the time, and you can either take the rover if it's there or walk in an enviro suit to the bunker, lock yourself in, you're set for now. You do have to wait for the main gate to open. That happens at certain times, certain alert procedures, things like that. Certain computer actions, we'll talk about those in a little bit, can open the main gate. But for the most part, if you've made it a good ways into the game, the main gate's going to be open. So the bunker is one way. The next way is the isolation room, which is always going to be over here. And while we're talking about that, let's cover the three tiles that are always on the board in the same spot. And Nemesis, really just the room where you could go into cryogenic freezing or wake up from cryogenic freezing. That was the only room that was locked in place on the board. Whereas this one, there's the isolation room, which is always going to be right here. The backup power supply is always going to be right here and flipped over. And the repository is always going to be right here and flipped over. And then there's the alert room, which is right here in the middle. You can see that this one doesn't have the full shape, so you can't fit a room tile over top of it perfectly. The alert room is similar to the cryogenic freezing room in the original Nemesis, where it's just printed on the board here. It's always right here. This is where you will activate the alert procedure, which we will talk about here in a little bit. But these rooms are always on the board. The isolation room does have a front and back side, does need to be flipped over, but people actually can start in the isolation room or people start in the repository. So let's get back to the ways that you can escape or consider yourself safe until the end game, like infection checks and contingency checks and everything else that can kill you. The other way is the isolation room. So at a certain point in the game, basically once the time token, you can see that these time slots are surrounded in yellow. Once it makes it into these white or 8 time left, the isolation room will flip over. There are some instances where it will flip over sooner, but you can see now that there is an action you can take here where you can lock yourself into the isolation room. Essentially, you would come into here, you'd lock yourself in, and nothing can get in. And whoever comes to rescue you would know to look in the isolation room. The third and final way is the cargo sending system. Now this is similar to the escape pods, but is a little trickier. Cargo sending system is really meant to shoot cargo up into space and have lunar ships or whatever that are slinging around Mars to pick them up. So the cargo sending system, technically you will place your miniature into these spots way over here, but that really thematically doesn't really matter. What you need to pay attention to are several rooms, which will say cargo sending system A. So you can see this one says enter the CSS pod A. And now it's important to note that this is a level 1 room. So cargo sending system A is always going to be on the board no matter what, somewhere. Cargo sending system B and C are level 2 rooms. So there's a chance they may not even be present in your game when you are playing. But no matter where you are in the base here, if you activate and use the action in a cargo sending system room, you would place yourself over here just to simply say, all right, I've kind of climbed into a pod. I'm ready to be ejected into space and get away from this nasty alien infested bunker. Now, you'll notice that along the time track over here, there are all these CSS tokens, and these are actually going to launch the cargo sending system at particular times. And if you are not in the right one, you actually will get kicked out and take a wound for having climbed into the incorrect one. So as the time token travels along here, once it gets to, say, this, during the event phase, this is going to be flipped over, and you can see this one, for example, would launch the C CSS pods. So unless you made it into the C CSS pods, you would, if you had gotten into the A one, you would get kicked out, take a serious wound. It might be a light wound. You're taking a wound. Or there's even ones that everything malfunctioned and there's no launch. So these tokens are, mixed up and randomly assigned here every game. And so you don't know which CSS pods are going to launch when, but there are ways to take peeks. For example, the CSS control room here gives you a way, if you take that action, to peek at the tokens, manipulate them a little bit, things like that. So have no fear, it's not always blind faith taking the CSS system, but those are the ways that you can escape or put your character into a safe space to get to the then end game conditions. So let's talk about what those end game conditions are that are different for lockdown. You still have to go through an infection check. You still have to check to see if your objective was met or not. And then there are these contingency tokens here. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to shuffle these up here, and you're going to take one of them without looking at it and place it way over here at the end of the time track. This is the contingency that could kill you. This is the one that matters, but nobody can ever look at that. No, there is no peeking at that one. There's no room that's going to let you peek at that one. But there is a stack of remaining ones that are going to sit right here. Now, in the standard semi-cooperative game, each person is going to gain one of these. So say you're playing a 4-player game, 4 of them are going to be passed around, but you keep them secret. You would look at them and you would say, ooh, well, I have the save all one, which is the best one to be sitting over here. But since you have it in your hand, you know that the contingency is not to save everybody. So that's bad. But you don't know what your partners have over here. Now, at any point in time, there are places that you can go to, like the archive. I didn't put the archive out here, but you can peek at contingency tokens. So you can peek and say, okay, well, this one over here says, kill all who did not send the signal. Now, there are no rules to say that you can't share your information of what your contingency token is, or you could lie about it. Again, that's in the semi-cooperative mode. In the cooperative mode, you all share a starting one, and then as you work your way through the pile here, you would start, collecting them like this. So, for example, this one says kill all in CSS pods. So you would know that if this contingency is in this pile, it's not over here, so CSS pods are relatively safe. Here this one says kill all who have 4 or less knowledge. Okay, so I don't need to necessarily worry about how smart I am as far as the Night Stalkers are concerned. I'm okay. So it's more of a process of elimination. Everybody does get a help card, which you can see here, which gives you the breakdown of not only the CSS pods and how many tokens there are. You can see there's 3 no launch tokens, 1 all, and then 1 C, 1 B, 1 A. And you can also see what the various contingency plans are. And there's 2 that say kill all who did not send the signal, and 2 that say kill all who have 4 or lesser knowledge. So using this card and using what you've seen, you can slowly whittle down through process of elimination what this token is going to be. But at the end of the game, even if you have put yourself in a safe position, either the isolation room, escaped in a CSS pod, or into the bunker, you've passed your infection check, you've met your objective. If you flip this over and you happen to have escaped into the isolation room, you are now dead. This is Nemesis, ladies and gentlemen. This game is brutal. It is a survival game of the fittest. So yes, there's a million ways to die in the West, and this is the Wild Wild West. So that is, again, one of the differences in Lockdown from the original Nemesis game. There was not the contingency tokens. There was like the engines and whether they were failing or not. There was the navigation where you were going in the ship, whether you were going to crash into Mars or something like that. In this case, it's all on the contingency tokens. Okay. So next, let's talk about the next biggest thing that a lot of people are talking about. It somewhat involves the elevator, which you can not really see off camera, but it's up there. It slides around off the mat here, back and forth. And there's actually a power token on it that is on its blue side. So I'm just going to leave this right here so you can keep track of that. At the beginning of the game, you're going to randomly assign these tokens. So you're not going to just put them out 1, 2, 3, and then 4 on the elevator. You're going to shuffle them up, and without looking, you're going to place them down. It doesn't matter at the time whether they're red or blue side. You just want to randomly put the numbers out. Then you're going to flip over the 1 and the 2 to powered. So in this instance, if we were starting the game, the elevator would have power, and this bottom level of the bunker, the lowest level, would have power, but these two levels would not. That's important for multiple reasons. One is that you can't use a computer system if there is no power, and we'll talk about computer actions here in a minute. You also can't call the elevator if the elevator is not powered. And also the biggest thing that you would want to pay attention to is, especially when playing the Night Stalkers, is that there's various ways the Night Stalkers affect you worse in the darkness. So for example, if you were to pull this token here, which is an adult token from the Nemesis bag, and you needed to put an adult out on the board, you would flip this token over and you can see it has 2 numbers on the back instead of 1 like the original game. The 2 numbers represent, well, whether you were in light or in darkness. And you can see that a surprise attack comes, the number is higher if you are in darkness. It's easier to not get surprised by a Night Stalker if the power is on. Okay. Also, you can see that many, well, I gotta find one here. Many event cards, like this one, have an effect up here and then an additional effect that happens if you are in darkness. So each character in a room with a technical corridor entrance suffers 1 light wound. And that's if any of your characters, if that character is in darkness. So if you are in darkness, basically bad things happen to you in this game. So you want to keep the lights on as much as possible. Now, there are ways, for example, the power generator room here, you can see the action of the room. One of the options is to power a section, or the backup supply, restore power, which there's a whole convoluted thing. I'm going to let you read the room description on that. But this essentially does 2 things. It not only lights up like 2 floors basically, but it also flips your time token to the blue side. This is important because you might not be able to see it, but on the time track here, there are these lines that cut through as you pass over them. And each time the time token passes over a line, if the color that is face up matches that line, it is going to kill power to the highest numbered level. So let's say, just for example, if all of these, if we somehow got the power going in every single level, but our time token was red, and we went from 15 to 14 and crossed over a red line, a power threshold red line. Since our time token is red, that would mean the 4 goes out of power. And then the next time we would pass over another one, and the 3 would go out of power. But if we happen to have done all this and restored backup power at the beginning of the game, then as we pass over this, since the token is blue, we would not lose any power. We wouldn't lose power until we got to this blue line. In this case, no matter which side the token is on, you're going to lose power. So that is how power can fluctuate throughout the bunker. You can also move the power tokens around. Certain rooms allow you to say shift 3 and 2, something like that. And the last thing is when you are attacking any alien, any intruder, but specifically the Night Stalkers in this game, if you are attacking in a room that is lit, you're going to get to roll the advantage attack die, which you can see is very similar to a standard attack die. It's got these same like larva, creeper, adult symbols on them, then the double hits, but it also has these ones here where it's like double hits, discard a action card to get a hit, or discard permanent hit, or discard an action card to get a second hit. So it basically, it's a little bit better. So you would roll the blue one if you're in a lit room versus the red one. You still only roll one combat die, but it's got some better options. And the last thing is that anytime during the event phase, if there is a room in a lit corridor, so this room is lit, and I'm just going to pretend this is my character, and say my character's made it way over here. He's nowhere near this room. As long as the corridor is not leading to a room where a person is in, because they're still making noise, if it's a lit section, you can remove the noise tokens during the event phase. So that's another bonus of keeping a section lit, because unless you are standing in the area, so say you were here in whatever room this would be, and there was noise tokens here, here, and here around the transmitter control room, this section is lit, it's got power, so during the event phase I would be able to remove these two because I am not in this room. These corridors are not connected to a room where someone is in, but this little person here, this little egg person here, is in this room. This corridor is connected to this room, so that noise token would stay. Essentially, it means that when you leave rooms behind, if you leave the lights on, you know, the noise tokens kind of go away. That threat of Night Stalkers goes away. So again, very important to keep the lights on whenever possible. All right, I mentioned one of the bonuses of having power to a section is that if you are in a room with a computer terminal symbol, like this one right here, you can use the computer, and different from the Nemesis original game where there was only specific things you could use a computer for in each room. In this game, there are these fancy computer cards. So you can see here that Computer Action E card gives you the option to discard a fire marker, or swap 2 chosen power tokens, or peek at a chosen CSS token. There you go. So if you happen to be in a room with a computer and there's power to that room, you can spend one action to take one of these choices. After you have taken that choice, after you've used this card, you discard it technically, I think, and then reshuffle these. So you would discard this one and flip over the new one. And here you can see there are different actions. I really like this touch in the game because the computer actions that you can take are dynamic. They change. And there are some instances where you may want to just take a computer action to do something you don't necessarily want to do, but just to see what the next card is, because then maybe they can give you the chance to peek at the next CSS token so you know which cargo sending system you need to run to and things like that. So again, this is a much different way to utilize computers in Lockdown. So this is very different. These cards, this is their spot form. Technically, they're supposed to go like that right there, but since I'm playing this way, I've got them stuck that way. But yeah. The last thing I want to talk about that is different for Nemesis Lockdown is the laboratory board, essentially where you find your weakness cards for the intruders or the Night Stalkers or whoever you are going after. And you'll notice that there is this knowledge track up here, and there's a lot of different things happening with this laboratory board, most of which I really like and I think is a better way to do it. First of all, you're going to start with one weakness already known. So in this instance, we would already know that any classic and melee weapon attack that deals one injury deals an additional injury. So, we would want to hunt down melee weapons. The second thing is that each character, and this just happens to be the purple character's token, is going to start the game either at level 1, or if they are what's considered Nemesis survivors. So that's going to be the survivor character, any character from the original Nemesis game, and the survivor character. Did I mention that? The survivor character, any character from the original Nemesis game, and the lab rat. They've already experienced, intruders. They've already experienced the bad guys. So they have a little bit more knowledge. They actually get to start at 3. Depending on where you start is whether or not you can use this weakness or not. So everybody knows the weakness, but this doesn't apply to you until you have gained 3 knowledge, and then you can see you can make use of this weakness. So you continue to analyze objects, mainly using like the laboratory or the testing facility and things like that. So you can still bring in a corpse or a intruder corpse token, or a hero corpse token, or an egg or something like that. Whatever it may be, you go through the steps and you can then begin flipping over these weaknesses. But again, you can't make use of these weaknesses until you have continued to increase your knowledge at the 5 threshold and at the 8 threshold. And as we saw before, some of the contingency tokens might kill you. Let's see if we can find it real quick. If you have 4 or less knowledge. So unless you make it up here to the 5th slot, you may get killed off by a contingency. There's also 2 sides to this token. You're always going to start the game with it on where the vial is empty. And you can activate your knowledge token by flipping it over to this side. This serves 2 purposes. The main one is that this means you have used the archive room, which I'm pretty sure is a basic level 1 room, is always in the game. But you can use the archive to flip over your token and gain 2 knowledge. So if you were on level 1, you would jump up to level 3, or level 3 to level 5. This just tells you that, hey, I've done this already. I can't use the archive room again. I can't just keep spamming the archive room to gain 2 knowledge. The other thing is that there are various objectives, cards that you might come across that require you to have your knowledge token activated. But again, so your weaknesses, you can discover weaknesses on a creature, and one always starts open. So that means you only have to analyze 2 things down the road to get all 3 of them, but you can't necessarily use them until you have gained enough knowledge on them to make use of them. And again, there are characters like the what was the scientist essentially in the Nemesis lockdown game with the funky robotic arm coming off her back. She can gain knowledge a lot easier than others. Or again, like we said, like the lab rat or the survivor, they get to start on 3. They start with more knowledge than, say, the sentry or the hacker, things like that. So that is going to do it. Those are what, in my opinion, are the biggest changes, the biggest differences between Nemesis Lockdown and the original Nemesis game. So if you are familiar with the original Nemesis game, hopefully this covers most of what you would need to know to jump in and start playing a game, because you're already familiar with the system. Again, if you are wanting to understand how the full system works with the whole player phase and event phase and the action cards and noise rolls and all that kind of stuff, check out my video that I popped up earlier, and that will explain to you the kind of the core mechanics of a game of Nemesis. This is still a game of Nemesis, it's just a different setting, and they have added some things, most of which I feel like are improvements to the game. But Knockdown is a little bit more complicated too, so if you're looking for a simpler version of the game, I would look to the original game, the Nemesis core game, first. Play that, see if you like it. If you really love it, then come and find yourself Lockdown. That's just my opinion. You know, Lockdown just seems to have a few extra rules to it that you have to kind of wrap your head around. But other than that, both are excellent games. There's a lot of tension, even when playing solo or cooperative. It really gives you that survival horror feel in spades. So that's going to do it for my how to play video on Nemesis Lockdown. If you have any questions, please feel to leave them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, including I'm going to be doing some playthroughs here on the channel, please consider subscribing so you can be alerted when those videos drop on the channel. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.